Thank you very much for your time. And I wanted to make one comment first to one of the speeches that was there made before about those Wall Street. Having spent some time on Wall Street myself, I can confirm that there maybe have been 4,000 floor traders, and maybe there are only 400 left, but I can assure you they've been replaced by 40,000 IT consultants in the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, a big thank you to KPMG, ACCA, and of course INSEAD, and in particular the Emerging Market Institute, and you, of course, Vinica, for having organized this and give me here a chance to speak about the CFO as an architect of change. We have a total of 15 minutes, and first of all, I want to speak a little bit about myself, just to give you a little bit more background in terms of where my views on this are coming from, where my thoughts have been developed. Then, as already outlined, I want to speak a little bit about my 20 years experience as CEO and CFO in terms of where this development and interaction between these two functions really has come from and how they have developed. Then secondly, I want to speak about the future of the CFO role and outline that the challenges that we are seeing in this function is not something that is new, that it has been there. And digitalization is just an additional add-on to this and gives us opportunities as well as threats. There are then two things in particular I want to focus on. One is a role about the referee of the CFO within an organization. And secondly, something which takes me back to an earlier part of my career, which is your function also vis-a-vis your investors' relations. I think some very fantastic developments there occurring. Then there's a lot of talk about, we saw that on the slides as well earlier on, in terms of CFO getting replaced by IT or by computers. I disagree with that fundamentally, and I don't want to finish not talking about the importance of staffing and a lot of the jargons that are being thrown around there, which I want to call into question, let's say. It's a lot for 15 minutes, so let me quickly get started on this. So as I said, I've worked for 25 years in the financial organizations. Part of it in Hong Kong with an equity broker, which gives me unique insight into the mindset of your sell-side research analysts. Then I took up a position at DWS in Germany on the board as CEO and CFO. DWS is the largest German fund manager. And from there, I literally changed sides. So from becoming a CFO, I turned over to becoming a CEO. And started working here in Singapore for a mid-sized fund manager for a couple of years, for 4 years. And then I moved to Luxembourg, which is where I'm still based, working as the CEO for a very large bank. Now, during this period as a CFO, I experienced firsthand this evolution of the finance role. And as a minimum is exactly what has been outlined before, that it was just providing financial data to the board, to shareholders, to regulators, stakeholders in the company in a timely and accurately manner. If I didn't push the boundaries of the function of the CFO, then that was pretty much all that that function entailed. Frequently, I'd seen that the finance department was being marginalized to just a data delivery department, and if finance was not fighting for an expanded role itself, no one else was looking out for it. And there were two ways during my period as CFO in which I wanted to improve these services. One of them was to simply make them more effective. The other one is to expand them into new areas to make them just as important, that CFO role, as it had been in the mid-1990s. How to make them more effective? There was, to me, something that you need to have a philosophy sometimes in order to apply, in order to make sure that you're on the right track. And I kept thinking about myself, how can I make the CFO function to be more sustainable, more scalable, and more shareable? What did I mean by this? Sustainable was an enormous amount of threat, and I think that big data is threatening us with exactly the same challenges, and this is the amount of data requests that are coming through to us. So as a CFO, I had to be very careful in terms of making selection about what reports do I actually put out and not get swamped by endless amount of requests coming from all types of departments. Scalable, to make sure that the new data that was constantly being required from our department was something that I could scale off what had already existed. Did I have reports that I could expand on, that I could take further into other directions, that I could make available to more people. And then the third part, make it shareable. So it's very manual if you start reporting your reports on a constant basis to individuals or to a small department. In a way, you have to turn around and be smarter, and technology helps us there. And this is make them shareable, so that literally your end users come and define what type of data they require, which way they want to have that data, and literally outsource back to the people what they are requiring. In relation to the second part, and this was the expand the role of your finance department, you all know that there are plenty of areas in which you can expand. There's your investor relations, I mentioned that, your budget planning, your tax efficiency, your project analysis, IT budget allocations, regulatory reporting, and the list could go on if I would have a little bit more breath here, I think. Today, there are two areas that I want to focus on a little bit more that I think are important, and that some of the work that I'm doing here at INSEAD also has pointed at. First is your function as a neutral referee within the organization, and secondly, your function within the investor relations world where there are great changes occurring. Let's talk about the first issue first. Your function is obviously not just to provide data when it's requested, but to ensure that the strategy of the company is focused on a value creation in a broad sense. Every department head, everybody within your organization is constantly coming to you with additional reports requiring additional resources. But you know very well from the data that you've seen that many of these are not really value creating. Professor David Young from INSEAD here has recently published a book called The Blue Line Imperative, in which he exactly analyzes this for the manufacturing sector, and it shows the extent to which companies are misallocating their resources when it comes to really creating value for their firm. Strategic considerations that they have in mind, whether it's market share growth or whether it's cost reductions or whatever projects they might have, are not really analyzed as being really value creating. And there's no department within the organization that is better than your own in order to challenge exactly that point. David and I, we've published a series of articles this year, and we are continuing to write on that series, which essentially takes the findings that he's had on the manufacturing side and expanded them into the financial industry. You can access them on the INSEAD's webpage Knowledge and read them as we put them up. The findings are not too dissimilar between the financial sector and manufacturing. Some of the findings are humorous. So in one of the papers we are analyzing case studies where this is not a joke, where CFOs have been working trying to put the costs of takeaway pizza, instead of expending it, trying to put it as an asset onto their balance sheet and then amortizing it over 3 years. Now, those of you that smile and laugh, you probably have had similar requests from your CEO or from your shareholders in order to stretch that P&L a little bit. Now, of course, pizza amortizing over 3 years on your balance sheet is absolute nonsense. And the mere fact that your department is doing this and is fighting for this is already value destruction. Some of the findings, of course, are a little bit more serious. So the pizza story leads to other stories where you then also roll your eyes. And one of the things that we found is when it comes to cost reduction programs, where targets are being set at the top level and implemented throughout the organization, many times you find how value destructive they can actually be. And that is if you are unlucky, and if you are lucky, then maybe you do get some value out of it. But what certainly very few people and very few organizations do is actually look at whether they are value creating for your organization. The result of those misallocations of resources within an organization for a long period of time is, of course, the demise of exactly that organization. The topic is of such importance that David and I feel that we're going to make an analysis on the financial sector in specifically pre-financial crisis and post-financial crisis. I have all these regulations that we've put in place and all the talk that we've had about changing the mindset of the banks. Has that actually led to something or not? If banks don't change their mindset and are just following regulatory changes as they come and are not changing the mindset about long-term value creation within an organization, then all we're going to be finishing off is another financial crisis. Now, the finance department has the tools, the knowledge, the data, the experience better than anybody else in order to challenge the organization and say, are we really value creating here? What frequently lacks is the political willingness to be uncomfortable within the organization. It's far easier for you to simply follow orders and things that are being given to you rather than challenge back other C-suite members at the board of directors and say, are we doing this for value creating? Now, if you're at the moment taking your time and thinking about how to write off takeaway pizza over many years in your department, instead of triggering heated discussions about the latest project plans or acquisitions, then you'll have an issue. Because I can assure you that if you're not looking at it, nobody else in your organization is looking at it at the moment. Be brave and help your organization focus on long-term sustainable value creation. Now, going back to this being replaced by artificial intelligence, if you think about that, is that a function that a computer can do in the near future? I somehow don't think that being that independent referee within the organization and poking those questions, that this is something where you can download some app on your iPhone and have it in your boardroom. I think this is an area where you'll be quite safe and where you'll add a lot of value. The second big point that is as an opportunity developing for you is in the investor relations area. Now, sell-side analysts in the past had it relatively easy. They took your annual accounts, they went to the cash flow areas, and then they started making their discounted cash flow models in order to value their company by taking your business model, projecting it into the future, trying to work out what your cash flow is going to be. Then they would apply a discount factor, discount it backwards, get a present value, add a terminal value, and finished. They would have a valuation. Now, theoretically, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that approach. Practically, this has become less and less accurate and hence less and less useful. There are two crucial developments that basically have caused this. Firstly, it's just the mathematical fact of low interest rates. But secondly, though, and this is the more interesting one, it's the increased volatility that we see when it comes to revenues, costs, earnings within organizations, which of course itself is just a reflection of digitalization and changes within the industry. Every industry is changing so fast that really trying to project cash flows into the future for value becomes less interesting than trying to project and find out which organizations can innovate, which organizations can redesign themselves, and which organizations can create value by changing and adapting. The tech sector, I think, illustrates this point better than any other. The speed with which technology is changing there makes it impossible for sell-side analysts in order to predict what the present value of the things that you're selling is going to be. What is important for the tech industry is, of course, how fast you change your business model. Now, right now, more and more of the sell-side analysts are looking beyond the cash flow models and are asking themselves the question, how can I measure the ability of your firm in order to redesign itself, its products, its client base? Apple, for example, is not valued because of the efficiency with which they manufacture iPhones and selling them to people. But instead, they're being valued on, are they going to be capable of launching another iGadget that we all crave for? That is what will create value for them. Now, imagine if you can help an analyst out there who has the ability to forecast the likelihood of a firm to develop the new products. This is where you come in, and where digitalization is giving you a unique opportunity to evolve into something quite unique and bigger and meaningful. As key investors throughout the organization, and you know that data, start thinking not so much just about the financial data, but also start thinking about, do you have any data that you can help sell-side analysts in order to determine whether you are capable of changing, whether you're capable of redesigning the organization? That's a great opportunity, I think, to have. One final point I want to have, and this is, I think it's been in one of the slides, and certainly everybody talks about it, and this is the human component of your department. I think as technology becomes increasingly important, there's a lot of talk about being replaced there, but I think some of these points are just challenges and opportunities. Now, a lot of the recruitment talk is always about attract and retain the right talent. You open the slides and always attract and retain. And I just want to close your eyes for a second and think about if you would have been really successful with an attract and retain strategy for the last 30 years. How would your department now look like? It would be full of 50-year-old experts. Now, is that desirable? I mean, is that really what you want to have? I don't think so, and I'm pretty sure that you agree with me that's not the case. So if it is not attract and retain, maybe you should start thinking about attract and redesign. Now, outstanding young talent nowadays, and you know this as well, doesn't want to be simply retained within the organization. They want to be challenged, they want to evolve, they want to learn, they want to move through the industry, from department to department. They're seeking in a career in which they're constantly redesigning themselves, changing. Now, if you can offer them that type of work environment within finance, I think you'll find that you'll attract the right talent and they will evolve and change with you. Now, I think I'm already over my time, but a quick wrap-up that I want to do, and this is in my short presentation, I spoke about the importance of you continuing running your department with some form of philosophy. Maybe the sustainability, scalable, shareability methodology is something that you can take back into your organization, think about. And I also had 2 words about the function in which, if you're not yet doing it, certainly expand to it. 1, the referee function, and secondly, what are investor relations and what's value. How can you show to investors that you are creating sustainable value by innovating and changing? And finally, the comment about think less about attract and retain and more about attract and redesign. Thank you very much. I know there's a lot of technology in which you can ask the questions, but you can also, of course, reach out to me later on in the conference, and I hope that I was disruptive in my speech about some of the points that are stuck in everybody's minds. Thank you very much.